Motivation. A need or desire that energizes and directs behavior. Instinct. A complex behavior that is rigidly patterned throughout a species and is unlearned. Drive reduction theory. The idea that a physiological need creates an aroused tension state that motivates an organism to satisfy the need. Homeostasis. A tendency to maintain a balanced or constant internal state. Incentive. A positive or negative environmental stimulus that motivates behavior. Hierarchy of needs. Maslow's pyramid of human needs, beginning at the base with physiological needs that must be satisfied before higher-level safety needs and psychological needs. Glucose. The form of sugar that circulates in the blood and provides the major source of energy for body tissues. Set point. The point at which an individual's weight thermostat is supposedly set. Basal metabolic rate. The body's resting rate of energy expenditure. Anorexia nervosa. An eating disorder in which a normal weight person diets and becomes significantly underweight, yet continues to starve. Bulimia nervosa. An eating disorder characterized by episodes of overeating followed by vomiting, laxative use, fasting, or excessive exercise. Sexual response cycle. The 4 stages of sexual responding described by Masters and Johnson. Refractory period. Resting period after orgasm, during which a man cannot achieve another orgasm. Sexual disorder. A problem that consistently impairs sexual arousal or functioning. Estrogen. A sex hormone secreted in greater amounts by females. Sexual orientation. An enduring sexual attraction toward members of either one's own sex or the other sex. Flow. A completely involved, focused state of consciousness with diminished awareness of self and time. Industrial organizational psychology. The application of psychological concepts and methods to optimizing human behavior in workplaces. Personnel psychology. A subfield of IO psychology that focuses on employee recruitment, selection, placement, training, appraisal, and development. Organizational psychology. A subfield of IO psychology that examines organizational influences on worker satisfaction and productivity and facilitates organizational change. Structured interviews. interview process that asks the same job-relevant questions of all applicants. Achievement motivation. A desire for significant accomplishment. Task leadership. Goal-oriented leadership that sets standards, organizes work, and focuses attention on goals. Social leadership. Group-oriented leadership that builds teamwork, mediates conflict, and offers support. Theory X assumes that workers are lazy, error-prone, and extrinsically motivated by money and should be directed from above. Theory Y assumes that given challenge and freedom, workers are motivated to achieve self-esteem and to demonstrate their competence and creativity. Name one shortcoming of instinct theory. Cannot explain individual differences. Some people pursue experiences that others find aversive. Why are thrill-seeking behaviors difficult for drive reduction theories to explain? Thrill-seeking behavior is often purposely seeked out because of its ability to throw a person out of emotional and physical equilibrium. According to the Yerkes-Dodson law, what is the relationship between task difficulty and arousal? Task difficulty is inversely related to arousal such that performance is optimal for difficult tasks when arousal is low, whereas performance is optimal for easy tasks when arousal is high. Negative correlation. Describe the difference between primary and secondary incentives. Provide an example of each type of incentive. Primary incentives are innate, whereas secondary incentives are learned. A primary incentive may be food, whereas a secondary incentive may be money. Describe the behavior of someone who has achieved self-actualization. Exhibit selfless, altruistic behavior. Describe how leptin acts as a chemical signal to tell the brain to stop eating. Leptin is a chemical that is released by fat cells as they grow larger. When brain receptors detect high levels of leptin, they send signals to inhibit further eating. Describe how damage to the ventromedial area of the hypothalamus can change how glucose is regulated in the body. Damage to the VMH can increase insulin levels, which causes fat cells to store more glucose. This results in fat deposits regardless of the amount of food ingested as satiety signals are impeded. Discuss 2 reasons why planning work-related eating during meal times affect food intake. Likely to eat more because the time correlates with the body's eating routine. Likely to pay Little attention to food intake by distraction while interacting with others. Meals tend to last longer in social settings. Describe how the likelihood of overeating can be explained from an evolutionary perspective. Early people evolved at a time when food availability was not predictable. When they encountered an overabundance of food, they may have overeaten for the purpose of storing more fat, which increased the chances of survival when food was scarce. Describe the psychological effects of bulimia. Bulimics are often ashamed of their binging and purging cycles, so they try to keep their behavior a secret. This need for secrecy may contribute to anxiety and depression. What evolutionary purposes may be served by forbidding incest? Decreasing the likelihood of passing recessive defective genes, puts pressure on societies to interact with neighboring cultures. Identify and describe the four phases of human sexual response as defined by Masters and Johnson. Excitement is the first phase that acts as the beginning of arousal. Plateau is the second phase, during which we are fully aroused. Third, orgasm involves a peak in muscle tension and blood pressure. Lastly, resolution returns the muscles and heart rate to normal. Describe the results of neuroimaging studies by indicating what brain areas are active while experimental participants are aroused. While participants watched erotic films, brain areas such as the hypothalamus, the amygdala, the prefrontal cortex, the striatum, and the ventral tegmental area were activated. Describe two gender-related differences in sex drives between males and females. The frequency of arousal and the number of sexual fantasies is greater for men than women, and this has led researchers to believe that men have a higher sex drive. Women are most likely to abstain from sex between relationships, and they wait longer, on average, to have sex in a relationship. Name and describe the two approaches to sexual education that are most common for secondary school students in the United States. Comprehensive sex education includes information about contraception and safe sex practices. Abstinence Plus provides less specific information regarding contraception and disease prevention. Instead, it focuses on promoting abstinence prior to marriage. Describe one piece of evidence that suggests that humans seek a connection from others from birth. The rooting reflex is displayed by young infants and includes an orientation of the head and mouth while seeking its mother's breast for feeding. Research suggests that this behavior is imperative for forming a healthy mother-child bond, a newborn's first social relationship. Discuss 2 psychological effects of social isolation. People can become catatonic, psychotic, or lose contact with reality in other ways. How does intrinsic motivation fit into the theory of self-determination? Intrinsic motivation is associated with the qualities of self-determination theory, competence, relatedness, and autonomy. Melissa is running the New York City Marathon this year in order to achieve a personal goal she has set for herself. Describe the brain regions involved in the reward learning pathway that will be engaged as she runs the marathon. The brain regions involved in basic biological reward, such as the ventral. If all behaviors were innate, which 2 types of psychological experiments would no longer be necessary? Learning and memory. What bodily adaptation is activated when external temperature rises and our body becomes too hot? Perspiration. What scientific law states that ideal task performance occurs when our arousal level is at the optimal level for the difficulty of a task? Jerkes Dodson. Name an external motivation to graduation from college. Employment, monetary, recognition, etc. What needs reside on the tier directly above the most basic needs in Maslow's hierarchy? Safety needs. What 2 chemicals that are present in the bloodstream and related to the metabolism of food have been widely studied? Glucose and lipids. What hormone has been linked to the regulation of hunger through the ventromedial area of the hypothalamus? Insulin. What is the term used to describe the weight at which our adult bodies tend to stabilize at a particular level? Set point. In addition to the physical risks of obesity, name a psychological risk obese individuals are at an increased risk of having. May be more likely to suffer from mood disorders such as anxiety and depression. What behavioral cycle defines bulimia? Binging and purging. What is polygamy? A cultural arrangement in which men have multiple wives. What age-related sexual findings did Masters and Johnson uncover? Sex can continue into old age as long as there is a willing partner and physical health remains. What area of the brain is involved in the reward processes and interacts with female hormones to influence feelings of attachment to a sexual partner? Ventral tegmental. According to the evolutionary perspective, what two male characteristics do females find attractive? Dependability and strength. What is the most frequently reported sexually transmitted infection? Chlamydia. According to the evolutionary perspective, what are two advantages of belonging to a social group? Group provides food and protection. What area of the brain is activated when we feel the pain of social exclusion? Anterior cingulate cortex. Name an example of a collectivist culture that places more value on group interest than on self-interest. Chinese. Describe an instance from your own life in which a biological motivation was inhibited in favor of gaining a social reward. Example, being a big boy or big girl for daddy and not whining when you are hungry on a road trip. In effect, hunger is inhibited for the reward of daddy's approval. What two abilities that are critical to achievement tend to develop over time as a child ages? Impulse control and ability to delay gratification. What type of cultures do not consider autonomy an essential element of the self-determination theory? Collectivist.